Hello, and thanks for joining us for today's video, where we'll be looking at 3 cases of people who were killed with nunchucks. But first, we want to tell you about the latest video we did on our other channel, Paranormally Listed. On that channel, we have 3 main writers. We had each of them write an original ghost story, and then we had voice actors portray the characters. So it's like a fully casted audiobook with visuals. The first story is about 3 people who visit an abandoned sanatorium that is supposedly haunted. In the second story, a TV executive gets more than he bargains for when he cancels a TV show. Then finally, there's a story of a woman who buys a house with a disturbing history. We would love if you checked out this video and tell us what you think in the comments section. We'll have a link to that video at the end of this video. Before we start today's video, we want to talk about our wonderful sponsor, Magellan TV. There are so many streaming TV services out there right now, but I think one of the best is Magellan TV. It's a hidden gem, because for being a premium documentary service, it's great value in both price and quality. I'm not surprised it's the highest rated documentary streaming app on Google Play. Magellan TV is the place for true crime fans because it's all about the drama of real life, the enduring quest for justice, detectives and victims who will never rest until the perpetrators are caught, the nature of the criminal mind, the lives of serial killers, and famous unsolved cases. Magellan TV has the largest and best collection of true crime shows anywhere. Plus, they're a sponsor of my favorite gathering for true crime fans, CrimeCon. The other day, a documentary on Magellan TV caught my eye, and I had to watch it. It's called Samurai Killer. It's about an 18-year-old man named Mornay Hamsey, who is a self-avowed Satanist and Slipknot fan. One day, in 2008, while wearing a mask, he attacked several people at his school with a samurai sword. It's a fascinating documentary that explores the motivations behind the young man's actions. This includes if his musical taste had anything to do with his rampage. I highly recommend checking out this documentary, especially if you like documentaries like Bowling for Columbine. I also love Magellan TV because they add over 20 hours of new content weekly. There are plenty of 4K documentaries and series, and they're included in your subscription. And finally, there are absolutely no ads on Magellan TV. You should check out Magellan TV today because they have a great deal for criminally listed viewers. They're offering our viewers 30 days of free service. To get this amazing offer, just go to try.magellantv.com/criminally listed. With the holidays coming up, you might have started your shopping, and Magellan TV makes for a great gift. Magellan TV is great for those hard-to-buy-for people. They have gift cards available. So please check out Magellan TV today because you'll find something great to watch or a great gift for someone you know, and you'll be supporting criminally listed in the process. Number 3. Robert Sellon. Robert Sellon was known for his sense of humor. The pranks he played on his sisters were fondly remembered. At 18 years old, Robert worked as a maintenance worker at the Golden 8 Pool Ball Hall in Grand Rapids, Michigan. On the night of October 26, 1981, 2 young men were hanging around the pool hall at closing time. The men, twin 17-year-old brothers, Michael and David Samuel, followed Robert into the basement. They were hoping to steal money or marijuana. Already intoxicated on drugs and alcohol, the twins attacked Robert. According to the brothers, Michael beat him with a hammer and choked him with a pair of nunchucks. David helped conceal the crime. The Samuel twins only got about $50. It's unclear how the police determined that the twins committed the robbery and the murder, but the police arrested Michael and David 3 days later. This crime was not shocking if you knew the twins. David and Michael had difficult lives. Their father was an alcoholic. He would frequently beat the boy's mother. At an early age, Michael and David started using drugs. David claims they were just 10 when they started. After the twins were arrested for the murder of Robert Sellon, they were going to be tried separately. Michael, who physically committed the murder, reached an agreement with the prosecutors. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 35 to 55 years of prison. David, who helped conceal the crime, was convinced by his attorney to have a trial without a jury. He was ultimately found guilty. On September 7, 1982, David was given the mandatory life sentence of life without the possibility of parole. Many people thought that this was an interesting case because the two young men were involved in the same crime, but they got two very different sentences. Michael was released from prison on January 28, 2009. He had served 27 years in prison. His twin brother remained in prison and was probably going to spend the rest of his life inside. But an interesting development occurred years later. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that mandatory life sentences without parole for juveniles was cruel and unusual punishment. In 2016, this ruling was applied retroactively to all juvenile cases. David Samuel was one of the first people to be resentenced in the Kent County Circuit, and he had an unlikely supporter, Tammy Smith, Robert Sellon's half-sister. For many years, Tammy was bitter about the murder of her brother. She was just 15 when he was killed. Not long after the murder, Tammy visited David in the county jail. Tammy told him he had destroyed her family. After saying her piece, Tammy tried her best to move on with her life. Eventually, she became a born-again Christian. For years, she learned about forgiveness. Around the time of Michael's release, she wrote him a letter, and he wrote back. Tammy formed a relationship with her brother's murderers. She stopped seeing them as murderers, but as two teenagers that made a horrible mistake. Tammy and the Samuel brothers exchanged Christmas and birthday cards. She even helped Michael find a job and a place to stay after his release. Tammy also helped the other brother in prison. She spoke in high regard for David's release and wrote a letter to the judge presiding over the case. David's new sentence could be 34.5 years to 66 years of prison. In that case, he would be immediately eligible for parole. There is no record available online as to what happened to David Samuel. However, he is no longer registered in the Michigan Department of Corrections database. Number 2. Ricky Butler. In 2007, Ricky Butler started his 11th year at Forest School in West Sussex, England. The 15-year-old was the youngest of 4 and lived at home with his mother. Ricky was an avid hip-hop and R&B fan. According to his friends, he lived for every day. On the night of November 3, 2007, Ricky was attending a party at his brother's apartment. It was a Pimps and Whores themed party. The party, which reportedly had about 80 attendees, was considered good-natured. That was until 18-year-old Richard Martin showed up with a neighbor around 2 a.m. Martin, who was unemployed at the time, tried crashing the party. Several people told him to go away. Not willing to leave, Martin antagonized the partygoers. One girl at the party begged him to stop. Martin shouted at her. After this, several partygoers forced Martin out of the party. At the front door, Ricky swore at Martin as he left. Martin took his bicycle and vacated the property. With Martin gone, the party carried on. Martin went home to grab a pair of nunchucks, which he used for decorative purposes. A few minutes later, Martin returned to the party. He viciously attacked 15-year-old Ricky Butler with the nunchucks. One hard blow landed on Ricky's head. Ricky was knocked to the ground and he attempted to protect himself. One of his friends tried protecting him. He laid on top of him, covering a prone Ricky as Martin continued to rain down blows with the nunchucks. Ricky's protector was also injured in the attack. He received a broken finger and injuries to the head that required stitches. After the assault, Martin fled the scene. Both Ricky and his friends staggered back into the party. Ricky managed to talk to his brother. Then he collapsed and fell into unconsciousness. EMTs rushed the 15-year-old boy to the hospital, but the injuries were too much. A nunchuck blow had fractured Ricky's skull and injured his brain. 15-year-old Ricky Butler died from his injuries. The next day, Richard Martin was arrested. During his questioning, Martin didn't say much, but the information he did give was consistent with what witnesses had said. He was charged with 1 count of murder and 1 count of causing actual bodily harm. The nunchucks used were found in the undergrowth at a pub near his home. Ricky's murder shocked the community and devastated his family. According to a family friend, Ricky's mother said she couldn't cry anymore. She said, "There's no more tears left to cry." Richard Martin's 2008 trial took 11 days. He was found guilty of murder. He was also found guilty of unlawful wounding, but cleared of wounding with intent. A judge ordered Martin to serve 15 years in prison. However, in 2009, a panel of judges re-examined Martin's case. They considered the 15-year sentence to be too harsh. There were 3 mitigating factors in their decision. One was that Martin did not intend on killing Ricky. Second, the crime occurred 12 weeks after Martin's 18th birthday. And third, Martin was considered, quote, slow thinking, unquote. So the panel of judges shortened his sentence to 13 years. Number 1. Nachtwey. 22-year-old Nachtwey had a bright future. She was popular when she attended high school in Maui, Hawaii. Her friends gave her a standing ovation at her graduation in 1999. Io had been an excellent student. She was reportedly fluent in 5 languages. These skills were going to be useful for her getting her dream job, a flight attendant. Nachtwey's parents were strict. She and her sister were forbidden from wearing skirts that exposed their legs. Her parents also preached self-reliance. In the early 2000s, Nachtwey's family left Hawaii to join the Hare Krishna community in Florida. Nachtwey did not move with them. She had been studying at Maui Community College, but then she dropped out. She went to the mainland and started traveling down the East Coast to visit her grandparents in Maine. Eventually, she ran out of money when she arrived in Maine. Although she was in the same state where her grandparents lived, she didn't connect with them. Instead, she spent a few nights in a homeless shelter. That's where she met Gene Bamford. Bamford, also known as Leppy, was familiar with the streets. He had been homeless for about 10 years. The couple made their way to the Pit in Harvard Square in Boston, Massachusetts. The Pit was a common commuter hub for people in the city. In a sunken plaza near the campus gates, homeless people would use the area to sleep or hang out. The Pit was also a place where homeless people felt like they could belong. Being broken homeless didn't trample Io Nachtwey's upbeat personality. Known for being the best dancer in her high school, she performed impromptu dances in the square. While panhandling, she carried a sign that read, "If you can't spare change, spare a smile." Nachtwey claimed she was happy. She felt like she belonged. In the summer of 2001, she and Bamford got engaged. That summer, a new group of men moved into the Pit. These men, 23-year-old Ismael Vasquez, his brother, 19-year-old Luis Vasquez, and 27-year-old Harold Parker, claimed they were representing the LA-based street gang, the Crips. On Halloween 2001, Ismael and Luis held a meeting in a Cambridge cemetery. They told the group they wanted to open a Boston chapter of the Crips and they were looking for 12 to 15 recruits. The offer was tempting. They offered food, shelter, and a sense of belonging. The gang recruited Bamford. The next night, the group partied at a hotel where members drank and swore their loyalty. In a strange ritual, members of the group were paired off for wedding ceremonies. But the new recruits soon learned it wasn't all fun and games. All the recruits were required to rob people and hand their money over to the gang leaders. Blood in, blood out was how the men described their requirements. Violations would be handed out as punishment for failing missions. The first violations would consist of a 30-second beating. The second would be a 1-minute beating. And the last violation would result in death. Punishment would be severe if they were double-crossed. The gang threatened to go after family members if instructions were not followed. Each recruit was to steal ATM cards and give the leaders $200. On the first night, members armed with BB guns and knives robbed people. On the second night, Nachtwey did not want to take part in the robberies. She stayed behind in a hotel room. On the streets and separated from his fiancée, Bamford found out the truth about the gang. The leaders of the group, supposedly representing the Crips, were lying. They were actually members of another street gang, the Latin Kings. For some reason, Bamford was angry when he found out. He and the other recruits were not sure what to do. They didn't want to go through the robberies, but they had to keep Nachtwey safe. They ultimately decided not to rob anyone. A female recruit and Parker's girlfriend, Anna White, reported back to the gang leaders about the recruits' betrayal. The gang leaders were furious when they found out that the street kids were not following through. According to White, the Vasquez brothers threw tantrums like little boys. They wanted vengeance. The next day, the Vasquez brothers and Parker called 27-year-old Scott Davenport, a known heroin user, to drive the group around. They were going to get him drugs in exchange for his help. The men, along with Nachtwey, White, and 17-year-old Doran Allian, drove around Boston for hours. At first, they insisted they weren't going to harm Nachtwey. Then the group threatened Nachtwey and demanded to know what she knew about the group. In an attempt to escape, Nachtwey jumped out of the car. She was quickly pulled back inside by White. The group pulled into a park near the Boston University Bridge. They decided to kill Nachtwey because they needed to send a message. The ringleader, Ishmael, gave out the orders. Lewis led Nachtwey under the bridge with nunchucks and raped her. He was interrupted by two other gang members. The group dragged Nachtwey onto the rail bridge. The two women held her down as she screamed. Davenport stabbed her a dozen times with a 10-inch knife. Allegedly, the Vasquez brothers and Parker threatened to murder Davenport if he didn't kill her. Help me, why? Stop, Nachtwey screamed. White and Allian could barely muffle the screams. Writhing in pain and still making a lot of noise, Lewis struck Nachtwey repeatedly in the head with the nunchucks until she stopped moving. Then they rolled her body into the river. The next day, Bamford heard a body had been dragged from the river. He immediately knew it was 22-year-old Nachtwey. Bamford contacted the police, bringing photos to identify his fiancée. The police arrested all 6 of the gang members. They were all charged with first-degree murder. Luis Vasquez was also charged with aggravated rape. Anna White and Lauren Allen both took plea deals in exchange for testifying against the 4 men. White agreed to a lesser charge of manslaughter and kidnapping. She received a 12-year prison sentence. Allian's lawyers got her a sentence of 12 to 15 years for her cooperation. The four men did not like this move. They felt that the women received a more lenient sentence at their expense. The men's 2005 trial lasted about 6 weeks. Prosecutors argued that the men killed Nachtwey to send a message to the rebelling recruits. The jury deliberated for about 5 hours. In April 2005, Ismael Vasquez, Louis Vasquez, Harold Parker, and Scott Davenport were all convicted of first-degree murder. A judge sentenced them to life in prison without the possibility of parole. They were all sent to maximum security prisons. Nachtwey's parents stayed in Hawaii for the sentencing. They felt it would be too hard to watch in person. Her parents recorded victim impact statements on an audio tape. The statements were played to the court. In a statement, Nachtwey's father, Bernie, called his daughter's murderers a disease in the human population, and they needed to be excised from the population of humanity. All four men took their appeals to the Massachusetts Supreme Court. The men claimed that there were errors in their trial. Davenport claimed he acted under duress and should not have received a first-degree murder conviction. All their claims for a new trial were rejected by the state Supreme Court in 2012. Harold Parker attempted to have his case retried in 2018. That was also rejected. All four men are currently in maximum security prisons throughout the United States. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. There's a link on the screen now, and there's a link in the description box below this video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.